He came to a small clinic for help. Never expected the doctor was the girl he lost that night. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Have you ever been in a situation where you thought your past was long gone, only to have it resurface when you least expected it? That's exactly what happened to Tom. Let's go back to where it all began. Tom was a man who had it all: success, wealth, and a life that seemed perfect on the outside. But there was a secret, one that he carried with him for years. He had lost someone important on a cold night, someone he had cared deeply for, and that loss haunted him every day. One winter evening, Tom found himself in need of medical attention after a minor accident. Injured and weary, he stumbled into a small clinic in the heart of the city, a place he never imagined he'd visit. Little did he know, the woman who would tend to him was the one person he had never expected to see again. As he sat in the sterile, dimly lit room, waiting for his treatment, he didn't recognize her at first. She was in a white coat, her back turned as she prepared the supplies. But something about her presence felt so familiar, so comforting, like a memory that had long been buried. When she turned around to face him, their eyes met. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. The woman in front of him wasn't just any doctor. It was Sarah, the girl he had lost that night. The same girl he had once promised to protect, only to have their lives torn apart by a cruel twist of fate. Sarah stood there, her expression unreadable, but in her eyes, there was something. A recognition, a flicker of the past they had shared. Tom's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure if it was the shock of seeing her, after so many years, or the guilt that flooded him, but the emotions hit him hard. He opened his mouth, but the words didn't come. The years of regret, the feeling of being incomplete, all rushed back in an overwhelming wave. Sarah, too, seemed to hesitate. She had her own demons to face. The pain of losing him, of the life they could have had, still lingered in her heart. But she had moved on, built a new life, and here they were, strangers to each other, yet so much more than that. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Then, Sarah broke it, her voice calm, though there was a hint of something more. "Tom?" she asked, her eyes searching his face. He nodded slowly, still unable to find his voice. "I never thought I'd see you again," she continued, her words soft but filled with meaning. "I never thought I'd be here, treating you after all these years." Tom swallowed hard, his throat tight. He wanted to say something, to explain the pain he'd carried for so long, but the words stuck. Instead, he just nodded again, unsure of what else to do. The moment was surreal. How could fate be so cruel, yet so kind, to bring them back together in this way? As Sarah finished tending to his wounds, she offered him a kind, professional smile, but beneath it, Tom could sense the deep emotions that both of them were hiding. He left the clinic that night with more questions than answers, his heart a storm of confusion. Was this a second chance? Or had the past finally come to claim him? Sarah, on the other hand, watched him leave, her mind racing with a mixture of unresolved feelings and the reality that sometimes, life has a way of reconnecting us with the people we thought we had lost forever. The next few days were a whirlwind for Tom. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sarah's face. Her smile, the way her eyes had softened when she recognized him. It all felt so unreal. Was it really her? The girl he thought he'd lost forever? Tom couldn't stop thinking about that moment in the clinic. The soft touch of her hand, the way she had treated him with such care, despite the years of silence between them. He had to see her again. He had to understand what this all meant. But each time he tried to reach out, the words didn't come. He was trapped in his own confusion, unsure if he should be grateful for this second chance or afraid of what it would bring. He needed answers. One evening, he found himself standing outside the clinic again, the same small building that had seemed so unfamiliar only days ago. His heart pounded in his chest as he pushed open the door. The receptionist smiled at him warmly, as if nothing had changed. "You're here to see Dr. Sarah again?" she asked, her voice light and cheerful. Tom nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, please." He had no idea what to say next, but he couldn't leave without talking to her. The The receptionist motioned to the hallway, and Tom made his way down it, each step heavier than the last. The door to Sarah's office was slightly ajar. He paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts, then knocked softly. "Come in," came her voice from the other side. Tom pushed the door open, his heart racing. There she was, sitting at her desk, her glasses perched on the edge of her nose as she looked over some medical charts. She looked up when he entered, her expression unreadable. For a moment, there was silence between them, but Tom could see the flicker of recognition in her eyes. "Tom," she said quietly, as if saying his name was a reminder of everything they had lost. "I didn't expect you to come back." Tom took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "I had to," he said, his voice rough. "I've been thinking about you. About everything." Sarah leaned back in her chair, folding her arms across her chest. "I didn't think we'd ever talk about this again," she said softly. "I thought the past was just that, the past. But here we are." Tom took another step forward, his gaze fixed on her. "What happened, Sarah? Why did we lose each other that night? It feels like everything fell apart, and I never got a chance to make things right." Sarah's eyes softened, and she sighed, pushing the papers aside. "Tom, it wasn't just that night. It was everything that happened after. We were two different people back then. I didn't know how to hold on to you, and you didn't know how to hold on to me." Her voice trembled slightly. "You left, and I stayed. I had no choice but to move on." Tom felt his heart sink. He had always known it was his fault, but hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way that nothing else had. "I never wanted to leave you," he whispered. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting you by walking away, but it was the biggest mistake of my life." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, her expression torn. "I never wanted you to leave, either," she said softly. "But I couldn't keep waiting for you to come back. I couldn't keep pretending that we had a future when you weren't even there." Tom's chest tightened, and he found himself at a loss for words. He had never imagined that the woman he had once loved so deeply could be so far out of reach. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "But I do know that I can't walk away again. Not now. Not after finding you." Sarah's eyes softened, and for the first time in days, Tom saw a glimmer of the warmth he had missed. "I don't know what this is," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But maybe, just maybe, we can try again. Take it one step at a time." Tom nodded, a sense of hope blooming in his chest. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a chance to make things right. As he stood there, looking at Sarah, he realized that maybe this was fate's way of giving them both a second chance. It wasn't going to be easy, but it would be worth it. And for the first time in years, he was ready to try. "One step at a time," he echoed softly. "I can do that." Sarah smiled, just a little, her eyes bright with something that felt like possibility. "Then let's start with that." And with that, Tom knew that he wasn't just walking into a clinic anymore. He was walking into a second chance at love, at healing, and at a future they could build together. The days that followed felt like a blur for Tom. After that conversation with Sarah, things began to shift, but not in the way he expected. They agreed to take things one step at a time, but Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something was holding them both back. There was so much unspoken between them, so much history that neither of them had fully dealt with. Tom found himself spending more time at the clinic, not just for checkups but to see Sarah, to talk to her. At first, it felt awkward, the air thick with things left unsaid, but over time, their interactions began to feel more natural. They shared small, meaningful moments, like when Sarah would joke about his inability to take care of his own wounds, or when Tom would bring her coffee, not knowing exactly how she liked it, but always getting it wrong. It was a new kind of closeness, a slow-building trust that neither of them had anticipated. But as much as Tom wanted to believe they could move forward, the past still loomed between them, casting a shadow that neither of them could ignore. It was on one of those quiet evenings, when the clinic was nearly empty and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights filled the room, that Tom decided he couldn't wait any longer. He needed answers. He needed to know why Sarah had left, why she had let him go so easily. It had always been a mystery to him. He had never gotten the closure he needed, and after all these years, he still didn't understand what went wrong. He walked into the clinic that night, his heart heavy with unresolved questions. Sarah was sitting at her desk, writing something in her notebook. She looked up as he entered, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. The weight of everything they hadn't talked about hung in the air. "Sarah," Tom began, his voice steady but soft. I need to know why. Why did you let me go? What happened that night? Sarah's expression softened, and she sighed, setting her pen down. Tom, I never wanted to let you go, she said quietly. But after the accident, everything changed. You didn't come back. You didn't call. I thought you had moved on, that you were done with me. And I couldn't keep waiting for someone who didn't want to be with me. Her voice faltered slightly, and Tom could see the pain behind her words. I had to move on too, Tom. I couldn't keep living in the past, in the memory of what we used to be. Tom stood there, stunned by her honesty. The weight of her words hit him hard. He had never understood the depth of her pain, never realized how much his absence had affected her. I didn't mean to hurt you, Sarah, he said, his voice breaking. I thought I was doing the right thing, that I was protecting you by staying away. But I was wrong. I should have come back. I should have fought for us. Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. It wasn't just about you coming back, Tom, she said gently. It was about trust. It was about knowing that when things got hard, you would still be there. And when you left without a word, it felt like I wasn't worth that fight. Tom swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in his throat. He had never thought about it that way. To him, it had always been about doing what he thought was best, but now he realized how wrong he had been. He had taken her love for granted, assuming she would always wait for him. And in doing so, he had lost her. The silence between them stretched for a moment before Sarah spoke again. I'm not saying it's too late, Tom, she said softly. But we can't go back. We can only move forward, and we have to do it together. If you're willing to fight for us, then maybe we can start over. But it has to be different this time. Tom felt a surge of emotion. This was his chance. He had one chance to make things right. One chance to prove that he was ready to be the man Sarah needed. I'm willing to fight for us, Sarah, he said with conviction. I'll do whatever it takes. Sarah smiled faintly, a small, tentative smile, but it was enough to make Tom believe that maybe, just maybe, they could start over. They both had their scars, their histories, but perhaps, together, they could heal. The future wasn't certain, but one thing was clear. Tom wasn't going to let this second chance slip away. He was ready to face whatever came next, as long as it was with Sarah by his side. The weeks that followed were filled with small steps, each one bringing Tom and Sarah closer to a future neither of them had imagined. They took their time, moving forward cautiously but with hope. Every moment together felt like a fresh start, a chance to rebuild what had once been lost. Tom made an effort to show Sarah that he was serious this time. He didn't want to be the man who left, who walked away when things got hard. He brought her coffee every morning, sat with her during her shifts at the clinic, and listened to her talk about her day, the small moments that she had kept to herself for so long. He was learning to be present, to listen, and most of all, to be patient. Sarah, too, found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. She began to trust Tom again, to believe that this time, he wouldn't disappear. They spent weekends visiting art galleries, a place that Sarah loved, and Tom was surprised at how much he enjoyed it too. He had always been focused on work, on success, but now, surrounded by paintings and sculptures, he saw a different side of life. It wasn't about achievements or power. It was about the beauty of the present moment, about being with someone who made you feel seen. One evening, as they walked through a gallery, Tom took Sarah's hand in his. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. Sarah looked at him, her heart racing. I'm glad we're doing this, she said softly. I never thought I'd be able to trust again, but somehow, being with you feels different. Tom smiled, his heart swelling. It's different for me too, he admitted. I was so focused on what I thought I needed, I didn't realize what I was missing. You, Sarah, I don't want to lose you again. Sarah's eyes softened, and for a moment, they just stood there, holding hands, surrounded by the art that had once been a place of solitude for her. It was a new beginning for them both, a reminder that life could be beautiful, even after pain. As the weeks went by, Tom began to feel more at peace. The past no longer haunted him in the same way it once had. There were still moments of doubt, of fear that he wasn't enough, that he couldn't fully make up for the years he had lost, but he pushed through them. He was determined to be the man Sarah deserved. And Sarah, for the first time in years, allowed herself to dream again. She saw the changes in Tom, the way he was trying, the way he was present, and she allowed herself to believe that maybe they could build a future together. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of her apartment, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Sarah turned to Tom with a serious expression on her face. "Tom," she began, her voice soft but steady, "I've been thinking about us. About what we've been through and where we are now." Tom looked at her, his heart in his throat. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah took a deep breath before continuing. "I think we've both changed. And I think I'm ready to move forward. To really give us a chance." Tom's heart swelled with hope. He reached out to take her hand, his voice thick with emotion. "Sarah, I promise I won't take you for granted again. I'll fight for us, for this." Sarah smiled, the warmth in her eyes telling him everything he needed to know. "I believe you, Tom," she said softly. "And I'm ready to fight too." That was the moment that changed everything. They had both faced their pasts, faced the pain, and now they were ready to move forward together. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be challenges along the way, but for the first time, Tom and Sarah both felt like they had a future worth fighting for. As they sat there, hand in hand, they both knew that the road ahead was uncertain, but it didn't matter. They had each other, and that was enough. The months that followed were filled with quiet progress for Tom and Sarah. They moved forward cautiously, still learning to trust each other again. But there was a sense of peace between them that had never existed before. Tom had proven himself, not just through grand gestures, but in the small moments. The way he would show up every day, the way he paid attention to the little details Sarah loved, and how he was always there, always present. Sarah, in turn, opened herself up more and more, allowing him into parts of her life she had once kept hidden. It wasn't easy for either of them. The scars from the past didn't disappear overnight, but they slowly began to heal as they built new memories, layer by layer. One evening, after a long day at work, Sarah invited Tom to dinner at her place. It was a small gesture, but to Tom, it felt like a huge step. They had shared meals before, but this was different. This was Sarah inviting him into her personal space, a place that had once been hers alone. When Tom arrived, she greeted him with a warm smile, and the familiar, comforting scent of home-cooked food filled the air. They sat down to eat, and for the first time in what felt like forever, they spoke freely. There was no tension, no old wounds lingering between them. Just two people, sharing a moment of connection. "You know," Sarah said, breaking the silence, "I never thought I'd be here, sharing a dinner like this with you." Tom looked at her, his heart swelling. "I never thought I'd be here either," he admitted, his voice filled with emotion. "But I'm glad we're here now. I wouldn't trade this for anything." Sarah smiled, her eyes softening. "Me neither." As the evening went on, Tom and Sarah shared stories of their pasts, of the things they had learned, of the people who had shaped them. Sarah opened up about her fears, her dreams, and the loss she had experienced, while Tom spoke about his regrets, about the mistakes he had made. It was a raw, honest conversation, one that they had both needed for so long. When the evening came to an end, Tom stood to leave, but before he did, he pulled Sarah into a gentle embrace. It wasn't a dramatic, life-changing moment, but it felt like one of the most important ones. It was a moment of understanding, of mutual respect, and of the quiet bond that had formed between them. "I don't want this to end," Tom whispered, his arms still around her. "Neither do I," Sarah replied softly, her voice full of warmth. "But we'll take it one step at a time, right?" Tom nodded, his forehead resting against hers. "One step at a time," he echoed. And just like that, they knew they were ready to face the future together. Weeks later, as the seasons changed and the weather grew colder, Tom found himself walking through the city with Sarah, holding her hand as they navigated the busy streets. It was a simple moment, but for Tom, it felt like everything had come full circle. He had once thought that his life was defined by the things he could achieve, the status he could climb to, but now, he realized that the true measure of his life was the love he shared with Sarah. They stopped in front of a small park, the trees bare from the winter chill, but the lights from nearby shops created a soft glow. Sarah stopped and turned to him, her smile brighter than ever. "I've been thinking," she said, her eyes sparkling with something Tom couldn't quite place. "About what?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "About how far we've come," Sarah said. "How much we've grown together. I know it hasn't been easy, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." Tom smiled, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "Neither would I," he said, his voice full of sincerity. They stood there for a moment, just taking in the quiet beauty of the night, the soft hum of the city in the background. For the first time in a long time, Tom felt a sense of peace wash over him. The past was behind them, and the future was full of possibilities. Together, they were ready to face whatever came next. Sarah reached up and kissed him gently on the cheek, her lips warm against his skin. "One step at a time," she whispered, echoing their promise. Tom pulled her close, his arms around her waist as he pressed a kiss to her forehead. "One step at a time," he repeated, and for the first time in years, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. As the weeks passed, Tom and Sarah grew more comfortable in their new reality, a reality that was still being shaped by the love they were rediscovering. Their relationship, though not without its bumps, was blossoming into something neither of them had expected. They were no longer just two people trying to patch up the past. They were building a future together, slowly but surely. Tom had moved in with Sarah, and they were learning to share their space, their time, and their lives. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of uncertainty, moments when old fears crept in, but they faced them together. One chilly evening, as they sat on the couch in Sarah's apartment, watching the rain fall outside, Sarah turned to Tom with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she began, her voice soft, "I never imagined my life would look like this. I thought I was done with relationships, done with trying to make something work after everything that happened between us." Tom looked at her, his heart heavy with understanding. "I know what you mean," he said quietly. "I used to think that if I just focused on my career, on success, I could fill the emptiness inside. But now I know it was never about that." Sarah smiled, her eyes meeting his. "Yeah, it's funny how life works out. We spent all that time apart, thinking we were moving on, when the truth was we just needed to find our way back to each other." Tom reached over and took her hand in his. "I don't ever want to lose this again, Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've realized that everything I thought I needed, status, success, it's nothing compared to having you in my life." Sarah squeezed his hand gently. "I feel the same way, Tom. You're the one I want to build a future with, and I don't want to let go of that." As they sat there, the warmth between them felt like a safe cocoon, a place where the world outside didn't matter. They didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time in a long time, they didn't need to. The present moment, the time they shared, was enough. Over the next few months, Tom and Sarah continued to grow closer. They spent their weekends exploring the city, discovering new places to eat, visiting art exhibits, and even taking long walks in the park. It was during one of these walks that Sarah stopped, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Tom, I've been thinking," she said, her tone more serious now. Tom turned to her, a sense of curiosity rising in him. "About what?" he asked. "About what we've built together," Sarah replied. "I think we're ready to take the next step. I know it's been a long road, but I believe we've both changed, and I think we're stronger for it." Tom's heart raced as he watched her closely, trying to read her expression. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice full of hope. Sarah looked at him, her face softening. "I'm saying that I'm ready, Tom. Ready to commit to you fully, to build a life together, to start the family we've always dreamed of, even when we didn't know it." Tom's breath caught in his throat, and he felt a rush of emotions flood through him. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for. The moment when all the pain and uncertainty of the past had led to this promise of a new beginning. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice trembling, "I've been ready for this for so long. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that as long as I have you by my side, I can face anything." Sarah smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Then let's do it, Tom. Let's start this new chapter, together." That evening, as they returned to the apartment, Tom knew that everything had changed. They were no longer two people lost in their pasts, trying to find their way back to each other. They were building something real, something lasting. And as they held each other that night, with the city lights twinkling outside their window, Tom realized that this was the life he had always wanted. It wasn't about success or wealth. It was about love, trust, and the promise of a future with the woman he loved. And that was everything. The next morning, Tom woke up with a sense of peace he had never felt before. As he looked at Sarah lying beside him, he knew that they had both found their way back to the love they had once lost, and this time, They weren't going to let go. As the weeks continued to pass, Tom and Sarah's bond grew stronger, their connection deeper. They had found something real, something lasting, and though the world around them continued to move forward, they both knew that their relationship had become the anchor they never realized they needed. Yet, even with all the progress they had made, the shadows of the past still lingered, and life had a way of testing their resolve in ways they never expected. One crisp evening, Sarah received a call from her old boss. The clinic had been acquired by a larger medical group, and they were offering her a prestigious position at their flagship hospital. It was a huge opportunity, but as Sarah listened to the details, she felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. This was the kind of opportunity that could change everything, but it would also mean moving away from the city, away from everything she had built here with Tom. After the call ended, Sarah sat down on the couch, her hands trembling slightly as she looked out the window. Tom had been at work all day, and she knew he would be home soon, but she wasn't sure how to bring it up. Would he want her to go? Would he understand? Tom walked through the door later that evening, smiling as he dropped his keys onto the counter. He immediately noticed the look on Sarah's face. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice gentle as he approached her. Sarah hesitated for a moment before speaking, her words coming out slowly, carefully. "I got an offer today, from a hospital in another city. It's a huge opportunity, Tom, but it means leaving here, leaving everything we've built." Tom looked at her, his expression unreadable for a moment. He sat down beside her, taking her hand in his. "What do you want to do?" he asked, his voice steady. "I don't know," she replied, her voice soft. "It's a chance to do something I've always dreamed of, but I don't want to leave you. I don't want to lose what we have." Tom squeezed her hand gently. "I don't want to lose what we have either," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "But you have to follow your dreams, Sarah. You deserve this opportunity. We can figure it out, together." Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "But what about us?" she asked. "What if we grow apart? What if this changes everything?" Tom took a deep breath, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. He had never been one to hold her back, but this was different. This was the woman he had fought so hard to get back into his life, and he didn't want to lose her now. "Sarah," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "This is a big decision, but no matter what you choose, I'll be here. I want you to chase your dreams. If that means going to another city, then we'll make it work. We've already faced so much together, and I believe we can face this too." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him, the weight of her decision pressing on her heart. "I don't want to leave you," she whispered. "I don't want to give up on us." Tom pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "You're not giving up on us," he said softly. "You're not leaving me behind. We're just taking another step forward, together." Over the next few days, Sarah wrestled with her decision, torn between the career opportunity she had dreamed of and the love she had found with Tom. Every conversation, every moment spent with him only made her realize how deeply she had fallen for him. Yet, as much as she wanted to stay by his side, she knew that she couldn't pass up this chance for herself. The night before she was meant to give her final answer, she sat with Tom in their favorite cafe, the soft murmur of conversations around them, the warm glow of the lights overhead creating a peaceful ambience. "I've made my decision," Sarah said, her voice steady. Tom looked at her, his heart in his throat, but he nodded. "I know this is hard," he said, his voice full of understanding. Sarah smiled softly, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and sadness. "I'm going," she said quietly, her decision finally made. "But I'm not leaving you behind. I'm not giving up on us. This isn't the end, Tom. It's just the beginning of a new chapter for both of us." Tom's heart swelled with emotion, and for the first time in a long time, he felt an overwhelming sense of pride for the woman sitting across from him. She was chasing her dreams, not for anyone else, but for herself. And in that moment, he knew that he couldn't ask for anything more. "Then we'll make it work," he said, his voice full of conviction. "We'll make it work, no matter what." The future was uncertain, but for the first time, Tom and Sarah knew that they had everything they needed to face it: love, trust, and the belief that no matter where life took them, they would always find their way back to each other. Months passed, and while the distance between Sarah and Tom had stretched across cities, their love had only grown stronger. They talked every day, their voices a lifeline that kept them connected despite the miles. Tom had thrown himself into his work, building his business, while Sarah thrived in her new role at the hospital. Despite the physical distance, they found ways to share their lives, from late-night phone calls to weekend visits whenever they could manage. Yet, as much as they both tried to adjust to the new normal, there was still an undeniable ache, a longing for the days when they could simply be together, in the same space, without the distance that had come to define their relationship. It was one of those weekends when Sarah came back to visit, and Tom took her to their favorite park. The trees had begun to bloom again, the flowers adding vibrant colors to the green landscape. They walked hand in hand, the familiar rhythm of their steps a reminder of how far they had come. "I've missed this," Sarah said, her voice soft but filled with meaning. "I've missed us, Tom. I've missed being here, with you, in this life we're building together." Tom smiled, his heart full. "I've missed it too. Every day feels like it's been a little emptier without you here." They paused on a bench, sitting in comfortable silence, the world moving around them, but feeling distant in comparison to the peace they found in each other. After a few moments, Sarah looked at Tom, her eyes serious. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what the future holds," she began, her voice quiet but certain. Tom turned to face her, his heart pounding. "What are you thinking?" he asked, a nervousness creeping into his tone. Sarah smiled softly, her gaze never leaving his. "I'm thinking it's time for the next step," she said, her words lingering in the air. "I want to come home, Tom. I want to be with you. I don't want to live for the weekends or the phone calls anymore. I want to build a life with you, for real." Tom's chest tightened with emotion. He had hoped for this, dreamed of it even, but hearing her say it out loud filled him with an overwhelming sense of joy and relief. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You have. Your career, Sarah. I know how much it means to you. I don't want you to feel like you're giving that up for me." Sarah reached out, taking his hand in hers. "I'm not giving it up," she said, her voice firm. "I'm choosing both. Choosing you and the life we can have together. I don't want to keep living in a world where we're separated by distance. We've already been through too much to keep holding back." Tom's heart soared at her words. For the first time in months, he felt like they were truly aligned, that they were both ready for the same thing. "Then let's do it," he said, his voice full of conviction. "Let's build that life together. I'll do whatever it takes to make it work, Sarah. I want you here, with me, every day." Sarah leaned in, her lips brushing his cheek in a soft kiss. "I'm already home, Tom," she whispered. "I've always been home, as long as I'm with you." The next few months were a blur of planning and excitement as Sarah made arrangements to move back. Tom was overjoyed, but there were still moments of anxiety, of wondering if they could really make this work. They both knew that the road ahead wouldn't be without challenges, but they were ready to face them together. The day Sarah finally moved back, Tom was there to help her unpack, to settle her into the new life they were about to start. There was something so simple, yet so profound, about seeing her here again, in the place they had both dreamed of. As they stood in the living room, surrounded by boxes, Sarah looked at Tom and smiled. "We did it," she said, her voice full of happiness. "We're really doing this." Tom nodded, his heart full as he pulled her into his arms. "We are. And I promise, no matter what comes next, we're in this together. Always." In that moment, surrounded by the life they had built, they both knew that their future was bright. It wouldn't be easy, but with each other, they could face anything. They were ready for whatever came next, because they knew they would always have each other. As the months passed, Tom and Sarah settled into their new life together, the life they had always dreamed of but never truly thought possible. They had weathered so many storms, both individually and as a couple, but now, with Sarah back in the city and their love stronger than ever, it felt like everything had finally come full circle. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, moments of doubt, and the occasional reminder of how far they had come, but every challenge felt like another opportunity for growth, for deepening their bond. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sarah turned to Tom with a smile. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she asked, her voice soft but full of wonder. Tom looked at her, his heart full. "It feels like a dream," he admitted. "Sometimes, I still can't believe we're here, together." Sarah leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder as they watched the world below. "You know, I used to think I had it all figured out," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. That I had to do everything on my own, that I didn't need anyone. But now, I can't imagine my life without you in it. Tom's heart swelled as he looked at her, his love for her growing in ways he couldn't even put into words. I feel the same way, Sarah. I used to think success was everything, but now, it's you. You're my home. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the world around them fading as they simply existed in each other's presence. It was moments like this that made everything worth it. The struggles, the heartache, the distance, it all led to this beautiful, quiet moment of peace. Over the next few months, Tom and Sarah continued to grow, both individually and as a couple. They supported each other in everything they did, from Sarah's work at the hospital to Tom's growing business. They learned to compromise, to communicate, and, most importantly, to trust each other completely. It wasn't always easy, but they had each other's backs, and that made all the difference. One day, Tom came home to find Sarah waiting for him with a big smile on her face. "I have a surprise for you," she said, her eyes sparkling. "What is it?" he asked, intrigued. Sarah handed him a small box, and as he opened it, he found a delicate gold key inside. "What's this for?" he asked, confused. "It's a key to our future," Sarah said, her voice soft and full of meaning. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through, and I want to make sure we always have a home, no matter where life takes us." Tom's eyes softened as he took the key from her hand, his heart swelling with love. "Sarah, you're my home," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Wherever we are, whatever happens, as long as we're together, that's all that matters." Sarah smiled, her eyes filled with tears. "I know," she whispered, "but I wanted to give you something tangible, something that represents how far we've come. This key isn't just for a house, it's for our life together." As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Tom and Sarah continued to build their future. They found joy in the small moments, the quiet mornings with coffee, the shared laughter after a long day, the warmth of each other's presence. They knew that life would continue to throw challenges their way, but they also knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. One evening, as they sat together, talking about their dreams for the future, Tom looked at Sarah, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "I know we've been through a lot," he said, his voice steady, "but I can't imagine my life without you in it. You're everything to me." Sarah smiled, her heart full. "And you're everything to me," she said softly. "We've been through so much, but I believe in us, Tom. I believe in what we're building together." And with that, they both knew that they had found something truly special, a love that had been tested by time, distance, and hardship, but had only grown stronger. They had created something beautiful, something worth fighting for. Their journey wasn't over, but they were no longer afraid of the unknown. Because together, they knew they could face anything that came their way. As the months passed, Tom and Sarah settled into their new life together, the life they had always dreamed of but never truly thought possible. They had weathered so many storms, both individually and as a couple, but now, with Sarah back in the city and their love stronger than ever, it felt like everything had finally come full circle. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, moments of doubt, and the occasional reminder of how far they had come. But every challenge felt like another opportunity for growth, for deepening their bond. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sarah turned to Tom with a smile. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she asked, her voice soft but full of wonder. Tom looked at her, his heart full. "It feels like a dream," he admitted. "Sometimes, I still can't believe we're here, together." Sarah leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder as they watched the world below. "You know, I used to think I had it all figured out," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That I had to do everything on my own, that I didn't need anyone. But now, I can't imagine my life without you in it." Tom's heart swelled as he looked at her, his love for her growing in ways he couldn't even put into words. "I feel the same way, Sarah. I used to think success was everything, but now, it's you. You're my home." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the world around them fading as they simply existed in each other's presence. It was moments like this that made everything worth it. The struggles, the heartache, the distance, it all led to this beautiful, quiet moment of peace. Over the next few months, Tom and Sarah continued to grow, both individually and as a couple. They supported each other in everything they did, from Sarah's work at the hospital to Tom's growing business. They learned to compromise, to communicate, and, most importantly, to trust each other completely. It wasn't always easy, but they had each other's backs, and that made all the difference. One day, Tom came home to find Sarah waiting for him with a big smile on her face. "I have a surprise for you," she said, her eyes sparkling. "What is it?" he asked, intrigued. Sarah handed him a small box, and as he opened it, he found a delicate gold key inside. "What's this for?" he asked, confused. "It's a key to our future," Sarah said, her voice soft and full of meaning. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through, and I want to make sure we always have a home, no matter where life takes us." Tom's eyes softened as he took the key from her hand, his heart swelling with love. "Sarah, you're my home," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Wherever we are, whatever happens, as long as we're together, that's all that matters." Sarah smiled, her eyes filled with tears. "I know," she whispered, "but I wanted to give you something tangible, something that represents how far we've come. This key isn't just for a house, it's for our life together." As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Tom and Sarah continued to build their future. They found joy in the small moments, the quiet mornings with coffee, the shared laughter after a long day, the warmth of each other's presence. They knew that life would continue to throw challenges their way, but they also knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. One evening, as they sat together, talking about their dreams for the future, Tom looked at Sarah, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "I know we've been through a lot," he said, his voice steady, "but I can't imagine my life without you in it. You're everything to me." Sarah smiled, her heart full. "And you're everything to me," she said softly. "We've been through so much, but I believe in us, Tom. I believe in what we're building together." And with that, they both knew that they had found something truly special, a love that had been tested by time, distance, and hardship, but had only grown stronger. They had created something beautiful, something worth fighting for. Their journey wasn't over, but they were no longer afraid of the unknown. Because together, they knew they could face anything that came their way.